London, spring of 1818. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of Winthrop House, casting golden rectangles across the Aubusson carpet of the drawing room where Miss Theodora Winthrop stood before the mirror, her hands clenched at her sides as her mother's modiste adjusted the ivory silk of her debut gown. At 18 years of age, Theodora possessed the striking features that should have made her the toast of the season. Dark auburn hair that caught fire in sunlight, intelligent gray eyes that observed everything, and a figure that the modiste declared perfection itself. Yet the young woman reflected in the looking-glass wore an expression of such profound discontent that even the most elaborate gown could not disguise it. Her mother, Lady Winthrop, paced behind her, counting on gloved fingers the eligible gentlemen who would attend tonight's ball at the Duchess of Marlborough's residence. Theodora heard none of it. She was thinking instead of her brothers, Magnus and Jasper, who at that very moment were likely deep in their cups at White's, gambling away their quarterly allowances, whilst she stood imprisoned in silk and stays, preparing for a market where she herself was the commodity. She thought fleetingly of her maternal grandfather, Lord Cornelius Hartwell, a man her father dismissed as an eccentric. He had visited once, taken one look at her studies, and remarked that a mind like yours is wasted on needlepoint. It was the only time an elder had ever made her feel seen. If stories of women who refuse to accept society's predetermined path move your heart, subscribe now and join us on this journey. You will not want to miss what happens next. The ball that evening proved every bit as tiresome as Theodora had anticipated. The Duchess of Marlborough's ballroom blazed with 1,000 candles in crystal chandeliers, their light reflecting off the jewels adorning the throats and wrists of London's finest ladies. The air hung thick with the mingled scents of hothouse roses, French perfumes, and the subtle musk of ambition. Theodora stood beside her mother, near one of the marble columns, a fixed smile upon her lips that felt more like a grimace. Already, 3 gentlemen had been presented to her: Lord Hertford, the Earl of Somersby, and Sir Geoffrey Blackwell. Each one examined her with the same appraising look her father used when purchasing horseflesh. "Stand straighter, Theodora," her mother whispered sharply. "Lord Ashbury approaches, and he has 5,000 a year." 5,000 a year to purchase a broodmare," Theodora muttered under her breath. "What was that?" "Nothing, Mama. I said what a lovely affair." Lord Ashbury proved to be a corpulent gentleman of perhaps 45, with wet lips and hands that lingered too long upon hers during their introduction. When he requested the honor of the next dance, Theodora felt her carefully maintained composure begin to crack. "I fear I must decline, my lord," she said with brittle courtesy. "I find myself feeling rather unwell." "Theodora," her mother hissed, but Lord Ashbury had already moved on, his expression one of mild offense. "You refused Lord Ashbury?" Lady Winthrop's voice trembled with barely suppressed fury. "Do you comprehend what you have done? He is one of the most eligible gentlemen in London. He is old enough to be my father and smells of brandy and desperation. You ungrateful child! Do you think your father and I have invested in your education, your wardrobe, your very existence, only to have you turn up your nose at perfectly respectable offers?" Theodora opened her mouth to reply when she heard a bright laugh from across the ballroom. Turning, she observed a young woman near her own age, perhaps a year younger, with golden ringlets and sparkling blue eyes, who appeared to be in animated conversation with an elderly dowager. What struck Theodora was not the girl's beauty, for the season was full of beautiful girls, but rather the intelligence evident in her expression and the way she seemed to be genuinely engaging with the older woman rather than merely simulating interest. "Who is that?" Theodora asked, forgetting momentarily her argument with her mother. Lady Winthrop followed her gaze. "Miss Arabella Esterbrook, daughter of Baron Esterbrook, 17, I believe, and this is her first season as well. I hear she is remarkably well read, which is generally considered unfortunate in a young lady, but her dowry of £15,000 makes up for such peculiarities." Theodora felt something shift within her chest, a spark of recognition. as though she had glimpsed a kindred spirit across a crowded room. It was then that fate intervened in the most unexpected manner. Miss Estabrook, concluding her conversation with the dowager, turned and caught Theodora's gaze. For a moment, the two young women simply stared at one another across the sea of silk gowns and tailored evening coats. Then, with what appeared to be a sudden decision, Miss Estabrook began making her way through the crowd in Theodora's direction. "Miss Winthrop," she said upon arriving, offering a curtsy that was perfectly correct, yet somehow contained a hint of irony. "I could not help but notice your skillful deflection of Lord Ashbury. I attempted the same maneuver earlier this evening, but my mother forced me into a country dance with him. My toes may never recover." Theodora felt a smile, a genuine one, spread across her face for the first time that evening. "Miss Estabrook, I confess I saw the dance and admired your fortitude. He appeared to tread upon your feet with remarkable frequency." "He did indeed. I believe he mistakes the dance floor for a stable yard." Arabella lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Tell me truthfully, does this entire spectacle not strike you as utterly absurd? We are paraded about like prize cattle, expected to simper and blush whilst being examined for our teeth and bloodlines." Before Theodora could respond, her mother intervened with forced brightness. "Miss Estabrook, how delightful! Lady Winthrop, at your service. I do hope you young ladies will become acquainted. Theodora has been quite without female companionship since we arrived in town." "Then I shall remedy that immediately," Arabella declared. "Miss Winthrop, would you care to take a turn about the room with me? I find the air near the refreshment table decidedly less stifling." "I should like that very much." As they walked together through the crowded ballroom, carefully avoiding dancing couples and clusters of gossiping matrons, Theodora felt as though she could breathe properly for the first time since arriving in London. "How many proposals have you received already?" Arabella asked quietly. "None, thank heaven, though Lord Ashbury appeared to be working himself up to one before I drove him away." "I have had two," Arabella said matter-of-factly. "Both from gentlemen who spoke exclusively of their estates and hunting parties. Neither asked me a single question about my interests or opinions. I suspect they would have been equally pleased to marry a particularly attractive Ottoman." Theodora laughed, a sound of genuine amusement that drew disapproving glances from nearby chaperones. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them I required time to consider such momentous decisions, which is to say, I refused them politely." Arabella paused, then added with sudden intensity, "Tell me something, Miss Winthrop. Do you actually wish to marry?" The question, asked so directly, caught Theodora off guard. No one had ever asked her what she wished. Her entire life had been preparation for this season, for the inevitable marriage that would see her transferred from her father's authority to a husband's. "No," she said finally, the word feeling like both confession and rebellion. "No, I do not. I find the entire institution rather appalling when one examines it honestly. My brothers, Magnus and Jasper, are granted every freedom imaginable. They gamble, they drink, they travel as they please, they make foolish decisions without consequence. Yet I must smile prettily and surrender every scrap of autonomy to whichever gentleman my father deems suitable." Arabella's eyes lit with fierce agreement. "Yes, precisely. My own brother has wasted 3 fortunes at the gaming tables, yet no one questions his judgment or his worth. Meanwhile, I am told that reading philosophy makes me unsuitable for marriage, as gentlemen prefer wives who do not think too deeply." "What nonsense," Theodora said hotly, as though thinking were somehow unfeminine. "It is worse than nonsense. It is designed to keep us powerless." Arabella glanced around to ensure they were not overheard, then continued in an urgent whisper, "I have been reading Mary Wollstonecraft. Have you encountered her work?" "My governess forbade it, which naturally made me determined to find a copy. A vindication of the rights of woman changed everything I understood about the world." "Then you comprehend what I am about to propose." Arabella grasped Theodora's hand with sudden intensity. Let us make a pact, you and I. Let us vow never to marry. We shall be the first of a new generation of women who choose independence over subjugation." The words hung between them, radical and dangerous and thrilling. Theodora felt her heart racing. Here was someone who understood, truly understood, and who was brave enough to envision an alternative to the fate society had prepared for them. "I vow it," Theodora said solemnly. "I shall never marry. I shall never surrender my personhood to any man, no matter his title or fortune." "Nor shall I," Arabella declared. "We shall be spinsters by choice, and we shall be glorious." They sealed their pact with a firm handshake that scandalized a nearby dowager, who whispered loudly to her companion about young ladies behaving in the most peculiar manner. The weeks that followed transformed Theodora's experience of the season entirely. With Arabella as her companion and co-conspirator, she found she could endure the endless round of balls, routs, and Venetian breakfasts with something approaching equanimity. They developed a private language of glances and subtle gestures, communicating their disdain for various suitors without uttering a word. Lord Westonbury, a humorless gentleman who spoke only of agricultural improvements, earned a slight raising of Arabella's left eyebrow. Sir Thomas Hartley, who had the unfortunate habit of spitting when he spoke, merited a delicate adjustment of Theodora's fan. The Honourable Frederick Baines, who appeared incapable of discussing any topic save the superior qualities of his matched greys, was dismissed with a shared look of profound boredom. Yet beneath their mockery lay a growing unease, for whilst they could laugh together at the absurdities of the marriage market, they could not escape the reality that their families expected results. Theodora's father, Sir Reginald Winthrop, had begun making pointed comments at breakfast about the expense of the season and his expectation of a return on his investment. One afternoon, as the two young ladies took their daily promenade in Hyde Park during the fashionable hour, Arabella broached a subject that had clearly been troubling her. "Have you given thought to what shall happen when the season ends and we are both still unwed?" she asked, her usual levity absent from her tone. Theodora had indeed given the matter considerable thought, though she had reached no satisfactory conclusion. "I suppose we shall return to our respective family seats and endure another year of disappointment and recrimination. And then another season, and another, until we are deemed officially beyond hope and relegated to the status of permanent spinster." Arabella's voice carried a note of defiance, though I confess I find that prospect less frightening than the alternative. As do I. Better to be a spinster with one's dignity intact than a wife who has surrendered her very self. Before Arabella could respond, they were interrupted by the approach of Lady Caroline Thornbury, one of the season's more formidable matrons, accompanied by her daughter, Miss Leonora Thornbury, a simpering blonde who had become engaged to Viscount Hartwell 3 weeks previously. "Miss Winthrop? Miss Estabrook?" Lady Caroline greeted them with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "How delightful to see you both still gracing us with your presence. I had begun to wonder if you had perhaps retired from society, given your apparent disinclination to accept any of the numerous eligible offers that must surely have been made." The barb was delivered with such saccharine politeness that to take offense would appear churlish. Theodora felt her cheeks flush with anger, but Arabella responded with unruffled composure. "On the contrary, Lady Caroline, we are enjoying the season immensely. One might even say we are in no hurry to bring such pleasures to a conclusion." "How very modern of you," Lady Caroline replied, her tone suggesting this was no compliment. "Though I wonder what your dear parents must think of such unconventional attitudes." Leonora was most grateful to secure Lord Hartwell's affections so expeditiously. "Were you not, my dear?" Miss Thornbury simpered in agreement, her hand moving unconsciously to display the impressive ruby betrothal ring that adorned her finger. After the Thornburys had moved on, Theodora turned to Arabella with barely suppressed fury. "The presumption! As though the purpose of our existence were solely to secure a husband as quickly as possible." "She is envious," Arabella said thoughtfully. For all her triumph in marrying Leonora to a viscount, I suspect she recognizes that we possess something her daughter does not. We have choice, Thea. We have autonomy. For now, at least, we are our own creatures. It was the first time Arabella had used the diminutive form of Theodora's name, and the intimacy of it warmed something in Theodora's chest. They had become more than allies in their rebellion. They had become true friends. The first season concluded without either young lady accepting an offer of marriage. Theodora had refused 4 proposals, ranging from the genuinely affectionate to the purely mercenary. Arabella had declined 6, a fact that caused her mother such distress that she took to her bed for a fortnight. As they prepared to depart London, the 2 friends made plans to correspond regularly and to meet again the following season. Their pact remained unbroken, their resolve unwavering. The second season of 1819 began, much as the first had ended, with Theodora and Arabella reunited and determined to maintain their independence. Yet Theodora sensed a change in her friend, a distraction that had not been present the previous year. It manifested first in small ways. Arabella would lose the thread of their conversations, her gaze drifting across ballrooms as though searching for someone. She began to take greater care with her appearance, spending longer at her toilette and expressing unusual interest in the latest fashions from Paris. Theodora, absorbed in her own determination to resist her father's increasingly insistent demands that she accept the next reasonable offer, failed initially to recognize the significance of these changes. It was not until they attended a musical evening at the home of Lady Rotherham that the truth revealed itself in a manner both sudden and devastating. They had taken seats near the back of the music room, the better to observe the assembled company, whilst pretending to attend to the performance of a violinist of allegedly continental renown. Arabella had been unusually quiet, her fan moving with nervous energy, when a gentleman entered the room late. He was perhaps 28 years of age, tall and well-formed, with dark hair and an air of quiet confidence. Nothing about his appearance should have arrested attention, yet Theodora felt Arabella stiffen beside her, watched as her friend's cheeks flooded with color. "Who is that?" Theodora whispered. "Lord Quentin Ridgway," Arabella replied, her voice barely audible. "Baron Ridgway of Somerset. He inherited the title 2 years past upon his father's death." The wealth of information, delivered so readily, confirmed Theodora's growing suspicions. "You know him." "We were introduced at Lady Rotherham's garden party last month. He spoke to me of poetry, Thea, of Wordsworth and Coleridge. He asked my opinion, and then actually listened to my response. He did not once mention my dowry or my suitability as a broodmare." Theodora felt a cold knot forming in her stomach. "Arabella, you cannot be thinking of him in that way. Our pact." "I know." Arabella's voice carried a note of misery. "I know what we vowed, and I have fought against these feelings. Truly I have. But Thea, he is different. He treats me as though my thoughts have value, as though I am a person worthy of respect rather than merely a decorative object to be acquired." "That is how all courtships begin," Theodora said urgently, "with pretty words and false respect. But once the marriage contract is signed, you will be his property in every sense that matters. You will have no legal right to your own earnings, your own children, even your own body. Is that worth sacrificing for a man who reads poetry?" Arabella turned to her, and Theodora saw tears standing in her friend's eyes. "What if I am not as strong as you? What if I cannot bear the weight of society's disapproval year after year? You have a fortitude I lack, Thea. I admire it, but I cannot emulate it. You are stronger than you know." "Am I? My mother speaks to me only to deliver lectures on my selfishness. My father has threatened to reduce my allowance if I do not accept an offer this season. My sister writes letters filled with pity and condescension. I am so very tired of fighting, Thea, so very tired." The conversation was interrupted by the conclusion of the musical performance and the subsequent movement of guests toward the supper room. Lord Ridgway approached them, and Theodora was forced to endure an introduction she did not desire. He was polite, educated, and apparently sincere in his admiration for Arabella's intellect. Yet Theodora noted that even when he praised Arabella's mind, he did so with an air of one admiring a prized possession, which made Theodora distrust him all the more. Over the weeks that followed, she watched with growing alarm as Arabella fell deeper under Lord Ridgway's spell. They were seen together at every social event, always properly chaperoned, always observing the strictest propriety. Yet the attachment was evident to all of society, and speculation began to circulate regarding an imminent engagement. Theodora tried to reason with her friend, to remind her of their pact and the principles they had sworn to uphold. But Arabella had become defensive, then distant. Their easy intimacy evaporated, replaced by strained politeness and uncomfortable silences. The announcement of the engagement came in July, halfway through the season. Baron Ridgway had made a formal offer, and Arabella had accepted. The wedding was set for October, to be held at the Esterbrook family seat in Oxfordshire. When Theodora heard the news, she felt as though she had been physically struck. She had lost her only true friend, her sole ally in rebellion against the strictures of their world. More than that, she had lost something she had not even realized she possessed until it was gone. Hope that resistance was possible. She called upon Arabella the following day, determined to make one final attempt to change her friend's mind. They met in the morning room of the Esterbrook townhouse, the air between them thick with unspoken recriminations. "I wish you joy," Theodora said formally, the words tasting of ash in her mouth. "Do you?" Arabella's voice carried an edge Theodora had never heard before. "Or do you wish to deliver another lecture on the evils of matrimony and my betrayal of our so-called pact? I thought our friendship meant something to you. And I thought you would be happy for me." Arabella's composure cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I thought you, of all people, would understand that not everyone possesses your strength. That some of us are weary of being outcasts and oddities. That some of us desire the comfort and security that marriage can provide." "Security?" Theodora laughed bitterly. "You speak of security while surrendering every right and freedom you possess. You will be his chattel, Bella, his property, and when you realize what you have sacrificed, it will be too late." "Perhaps I have made a mistake," Arabella said quietly. "Or perhaps you are the one who errs in believing that loneliness and defiance are somehow nobler than love and compromise. Time will tell which of us chose more wisely." They parted in anger and hurt, and Theodora did not attend the wedding. The breach between them, once opened, proved impossible to repair. Arabella became Lady Ridgway and removed to Somerset with her new husband. Theodora returned to Winthrop Manor in Hertfordshire, more determined than ever to maintain her independence, no matter the cost. The years that followed tested that determination in ways Theodora had not anticipated. Her third season in 1820 proved even more difficult than the previous two. Without Arabella's companionship, the endless social events felt truly unbearable. The whispers and pitying glances intensified. She was no longer a young lady with prospects, but a confirmed spinster in the making. Her fourth season in 1821 saw the invitations begin to dwindle. Hostesses deemed her presence at their events more liability than asset, her refusal to accept offers reflecting poorly on their own matchmaking abilities. Her fifth season in 1822 was her last in London. Her mother, exhausted by years of disappointment, declared she would no longer waste time and money on a daughter so determined to shame her family. Theodora spent the seasons of 1823, 1824, and 1825 largely isolated at Winthrop Manor. Her father would not speak to her save to deliver increasingly bitter recriminations about her selfishness and stubbornness. Her brothers, Magnus and Jasper, had by this time thoroughly dissipated their expectations through gambling and reckless living, and they blamed Theodora's unmarried state for their father's refusal to advance them further funds. The loneliness was sometimes overwhelming. There were nights when Theodora questioned her choices, wondered if Arabella had been right after all. Yet each time she wavered, she would recall the expression on her friend's face during their final conversation, the exhaustion and resignation, and she would steel her resolve once more. The letters from Arabella, which had arrived intermittently over the years, painted a picture that confirmed Theodora's worst fears. The first letters had been cheerful, filled with news of her new home and expressions of contentment. But gradually, a different tone emerged. Arabella wrote of Quentin's increasing control over household expenditures, of his insistence that she discontinue her correspondence with certain friends he deemed inappropriate, of his anger when she expressed opinions that contradicted his own. The most recent letter, which arrived in the spring of 1826, contained words that haunted Theodora for weeks. "He who once praised my opinions on Wordsworth now forbids me to read the newspapers. I had forgotten what it was like to think my own thoughts, Thea. I fear I no longer do." It was in this state, lonely but unbowed, having endured 10 full seasons, and with the 11th looming, that Theodora's circumstances changed in the most unexpected manner. The letter arrived on a damp October morning in 1828, delivered by a London solicitor who had traveled specifically to Winthrop Manor for the purpose. Theodora, now 28 years of age and long resigned to her status as the family disappointment, accepted the sealed document with curiosity but little expectation. Her maternal grandfather, Lord Cornelius Hartwell, had died. Theodora had known Lord Cornelius only slightly. He had lived quietly on his estate in Devon, and relations between him and the Winthrop family had been cordial but distant. She had visited Hartwell Manor perhaps 3 times in her childhood, retaining only vague memories of a large house surrounded by beautiful gardens and a kind gentleman who had once given her a book of poetry. The solicitor, Mr. Edmund Pritchard, was a precise man of middle years who wasted no time on pleasantries. He requested a private audience with Miss Winthrop, and when her father attempted to join them in the library, Mr. Pritchard politely but firmly indicated that his business was with Miss Winthrop alone. "Your grandfather's will contains several bequests," Mr. Pritchard began, once they were settled. "But the principal legacy is intended for you, Miss Winthrop. Lord Cornelius was most specific in his instructions." Theodora felt her heart begin to race, though she could not have said whether from hope or dread. "I do not understand. Surely the estate passes to his son, my uncle." "Lord Hartwell's only son predeceased him by 10 years. The title became extinct upon your grandfather's death. However, the unentailed portions of the estate were his to dispose of as he wished." Mr. Pritchard withdrew a document from his case, to wit, the sum of £25,000, invested in the 4% consols, yielding an annual income of £1,000. Additionally, Hartwell Manor itself and its surrounding lands, comprising 180 acres, together with all furnishings, livestock, and implements therein. Theodora could not speak. The sum was beyond anything she had imagined. With £1,000 per annum, she would be financially independent, beholden to no one. She could live comfortably, even elegantly, for the remainder of her life. "There is a condition," Mr. Pritchard continued. "Your grandfather's letter of wishes, whilst not legally binding, expresses his hope that you will use this legacy to live freely, according to your own conscience and desires, without the necessity of matrimony." He was most emphatic on this point. "My grandfather knew of my circumstances. He followed your progress through the seasons with great interest, Miss Winthrop. He expressed to me on several occasions his admiration for your courage in refusing to conform to society's expectations. He wished to ensure that your convictions would not consign you to poverty or dependence upon reluctant relatives." Theodora felt tears pricking at her eyes, the first she had shed in years. A man she barely knew had understood her better than her own parents, had valued her autonomy enough to secure it through law. "My father will contest this," she said quietly. "He may certainly attempt to do so. However, the will is properly executed and witnessed. Lord Hartwell was of sound mind when he made these dispositions. I am confident any challenge would prove unsuccessful. Mr. Pritchard's expression softened slightly. Your grandfather anticipated resistance from your family. He left me with instructions to assist you in any manner necessary to ensure your inheritance passes to you intact. The explosion, when it came, exceeded even Theodora's expectations. Her father turned scarlet with rage upon learning that a fortune had been left to his spinster daughter whilst his sons received nothing. He declared the will an insult, an abomination, and vowed to have it overturned in chancery. That money should come to me as head of the Winthrop family, Sir Reginald thundered. Your grandfather had no right to circumvent the natural order in this manner. The money and property were his to dispose of as he wished, Theodora replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. And he wished them to go to me. Ungrateful creature. After all we have sacrificed for you, enduring year after year of humiliation as you refused perfectly acceptable offers, and now you would rob your own brothers of their rightful inheritance? It was never their inheritance. It was never yours. It is mine, left to me by a man who valued my independence more than you ever have. Magnus, swaying slightly from drink despite the early hour, lurched forward. While Jasper and I struggle to maintain our positions in society, you hoard this fortune like some grasping merchant's daughter. Have you no sense of family duty? Have you? Theodora's control finally broke. You have gambled away every shilling father has given you. You have brought shame upon this family through your dissipation and recklessness. Yet I am called selfish for accepting a legacy freely given to me. I owe you nothing. I owe this family nothing. I have spent 10 years enduring your contempt for my refusal to marry, and now that I have the means to live independently, you begrudge me even that. You will never see a penny of it, her father said coldly. I shall tie this matter up in the courts for years if necessary. You may have a piece of paper declaring you an heiress, but you will die a pauper before I allow you to profit from your unnatural stubbornness. But Sir Reginald had underestimated both the skill of Mr. Pritchard and the ironclad nature of Lord Cornelius's will. Within 3 months, the courts had dismissed his challenge, and Theodora received full control of her inheritance. She did not linger at Winthrop Manor. On a cold January morning in 1829, she departed for Devon with only the belongings she could fit in a single trunk, leaving behind a family that had never truly valued her. She did not look back. Hartwell Manor sat nestled in a gentle valley 3 miles from the market town of Ashburton, surrounded by rolling hills and ancient woodlands. The house itself was a graceful Queen Anne structure of red brick and white stone, smaller than Winthrop Manor, but infinitely more welcoming. Theodora fell in love with it the moment she stepped through the door. The staff, having been maintained by Lord Cornelius's executors pending her arrival, received her with curiosity and caution. They had heard, no doubt, the various rumors about the new mistress, that she was a spinster of nearly 30, that she had refused 15 proposals, that she had been disinherited by her own family. Theodora addressed them on her first evening in residence, gathered in the servants' hall. I am aware that my circumstances are unusual, she began, her voice firm. I am unmarried by choice, and I intend to remain so. I shall be managing this estate myself, and I expect the same level of respect and competence you would afford any gentleman in my position. In return, I promise fairness, honesty, and security of employment to all who serve me well. The arrangement proved surprisingly successful. Her steward, Mr. Nicholas Fletcher, a capable man of 40 who had served her grandfather for 15 years, initially expressed doubts about taking instruction from an unmarried lady. But Theodora proved an apt student of estate management, and within 6 months, Mr. Fletcher had become her staunchest advocate. Miss Winthrop has a mind for figures that would shame many a gentleman, he told the local vicar. And she understands that an estate is not merely acres and income, but people and community. Indeed, Theodora threw herself into the role of landowner with an energy born of long suppressed purpose. She walked her lands, learned the names of her tenants, involved herself in their concerns. When she discovered that the daughters of her tenant farmers had no access to education, she established a small school in one of the estate's unused buildings, hiring a respectable widow from the village to serve as teacher. The local gentry did not know what to make of her. An unmarried woman of means, living independently, involving herself in business matters typically reserved for men, it was unprecedented and therefore suspect. Invitations to dinners and assemblies were not forthcoming. Theodora found she did not particularly mind. Her days fell into a rhythm that brought her a measure of peace she had never known during her years in London. She rose early, spent her mornings reviewing accounts and consulting with Mr. Fletcher, her afternoons reading in her grandfather's extensive library or walking through the gardens she was gradually restoring. Her evenings were quiet, devoted to correspondence and study. She heard occasionally from Arabella, though the letters were infrequent and carefully worded. Between the lines, Theodora read a story of increasing isolation and control. Quentin had proven to be a jealous and domineering husband, one who viewed his wife's intellectual interests as threats to his authority. Arabella had borne him 3 children in rapid succession and was by all accounts exhausted and unhappy. "I wonder sometimes what my life might have been had I possessed your courage," Arabella wrote in a letter that arrived in the autumn of 1830. "You tried to warn me, but I was too frightened of loneliness to heed you. Now I understand that there are far worse things than being alone." Theodora wrote back, offering what comfort she could and extending an invitation to visit Hartwell Manor should Arabella ever need refuge. But she knew the invitation would likely never be accepted. Arabella was trapped, as so many women were, by laws that gave her husband complete control over her person, her property, and her children. The years passed with surprising swiftness. Theodora's school for girls grew, eventually accommodating 30 students from the surrounding farms and villages. She began writing essays on women's education and property rights, publishing them anonymously in London periodicals under the pseudonym A Lady of Devon. Her articles attracted attention, both positive and critical, but her anonymity protected her from the worst of society's censure. She was not precisely happy, for loneliness remained a constant companion. But she was content, purposeful, and free. She answered to no one, made her own decisions, lived according to her own principles. At 33 years of age, she had built a life of dignity and meaning, one that would have been impossible had she accepted any of the 15 proposals she had refused. It was in the spring of 1833, 5 years after taking possession of Hartwell Manor, that Theodora received the letter that would prove to be the culmination of her long struggle. Arabella wrote to inform her that she was coming to Devon, bringing her 3 children, and begging for sanctuary. Quentin's behavior had become increasingly erratic and violent. He had struck her during an argument, and Arabella had finally found the courage to flee. "You were right about everything," Arabella wrote. "Marriage has been a prison, and I have been the most willing of inmates. I do not know if I can ever truly be free, for the law gives him the right to compel my return and to keep my children from me. But I must try. You showed me years ago that another way was possible. I was too weak then to follow you. I pray I am strong enough now." Theodora made immediate preparations. She converted the east wing of Hartwell Manor into comfortable apartments for Arabella and her children. She consulted with Mr. Pritchard regarding the legal complexities of a wife leaving her husband. The picture he painted was grim. Quentin had every legal right to force Arabella's return and to remove the children from her custody. Only if he could be proven mad or monstrously cruel might a separation be obtained, and even then, Arabella would likely lose her children. However, Mr. Pritchard added thoughtfully, if Lady Ridgway were to remain quietly in Devon, away from London society, and if her husband were to be persuaded that pursuing her would create a scandal more damaging than allowing her to live separately, an informal arrangement might be reached. Arabella arrived in late May, thin and pale, her 3 children clinging to her skirts. The eldest, a girl of 10, had her mother's golden hair but a wariness in her eyes that broke Theodora's heart. The 2 younger children, boys of 8 and 6, were shy and watchful. For the first week, Arabella said little, seeming content merely to rest in the peaceful surroundings of Hartwell Manor. Then, one evening, as they sat together in the library, she finally spoke of her experiences. "You tried to warn me," she said quietly. "On that terrible day when we quarreled, you told me I would become his property. I thought you were being dramatic. I thought love would protect me. But there is no protection in law for wives, Thea. I learned that quickly enough. Tell me what happened." And Arabella did, haltingly at first, then with increasing urgency. She spoke of the gradual erosion of her autonomy, of how Quentin had dismissed her opinions, controlled her expenditures, isolated her from her friends. She spoke of his rages when she dared to contradict him, of how he had forbidden her to read certain books or express certain ideas. She spoke of how she had become a ghost in her own life, performing the role of dutiful wife, whilst her true self withered away. "The final blow came when he struck me," Arabella said, touching her cheek as though the bruise were still visible. "Not because the blow itself was so terrible, though it was, but because I realized in that moment that I had allowed myself to become the very thing I had sworn never to be. I had let fear turn me into a slave." "You are not a slave," Theodora said fiercely. "You are a woman who made a choice based on the limited options society provided. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. But you made a different choice. You were braver." "I was not braver, Bella. I was luckier. My grandfather gave me the means to be brave. Without his legacy, my fate, it might well have been yours. The true evil is that a woman's courage in our world requires a fortune to survive. The true evil is not that women like you choose marriage, but that we are given so few alternatives." Over the following months, Theodora and Mr. Pritchard negotiated carefully with Baron Ridgway. He was, they discovered, less concerned with retrieving his wife than with avoiding public scandal. In the end, a quiet separation was arranged. Arabella would remain at Hartwell Manor with her children. Quentin would maintain appearances by claiming she was visiting relatives for her health. He would provide a modest allowance, though far less than her original marriage settlement had promised. In return, Arabella would make no public accusations against him. It was not justice, but it was survival. And for Arabella, after years of captivity, survival felt very much like victory. As the months turned to years, Hartwell Manor became a haven for both women. Arabella slowly regained her strength and her sense of self. She began helping with Theodora's school, teaching literature and history to the older girls. Her children thrived in the freedom of the countryside, growing healthier and happier away from their father's oppressive presence. "I envy you sometimes," Arabella confessed one evening as they sat together in the drawing room, working on needlework whilst the children played in the garden. "You never had to learn these lessons through suffering. You knew from the beginning what marriage would cost." "I knew in theory," Theodora corrected gently. "But you have lived the reality. Your experience, painful as it has been, gives you a wisdom I could never possess. And you have your children, which is a joy I shall never know." "Is it enough for you?" Arabella asked. "This life of solitude and purpose? Do you never regret your choices?" Theodora considered the question seriously before answering. "There are moments of loneliness, certainly. Moments when I wonder what it might have been like to have a true partner. Someone who valued my mind and my heart equally. But then I remember that such men are vanishingly rare, and the law would have made me his property regardless of his personal virtue. No, Bella, I do not regret my choices. This life, with all its limitations and loneliness, is still infinitely preferable to the alternative." The years continued their steady march. Theodora's school expanded again, and she began accepting pupils from farther afield, daughters of tradesmen and farmers who otherwise would have had no access to education. Her anonymous essays garnered increased attention, contributing to the growing debate on the woman question. She never married, never wavered from the vow she had made as a girl of 18. On her 32nd birthday in 1832, Theodora stood in her library, surrounded by the books her grandfather had collected and the new volumes she had added. Through the window, she could see the gardens in full summer bloom, could hear the distant laughter of Arabella's children playing with the tenant farmer's children. She thought of that young woman she had been, standing in the Duchess of Marlborough's ballroom, refusing to smile at men who saw her as property. She thought of the 10 seasons of refusal, the loneliness, the social ostracism. She thought of Arabella's suffering and eventual liberation, of the 30 girls currently enrolled in her school, of the essays she had published arguing for women's legal rights. Had it been worth it? The cost had been high: family estrangement, social isolation, the surrender of possibilities she would never know. But the reward had been higher still: autonomy, dignity, purpose, and the knowledge that she had lived according to her principles rather than society's expectations. A knock at the library door interrupted her reverie. It was Arabella's eldest daughter, now a young woman of 16, bright and curious and utterly unlike the frightened child who had arrived 5 years earlier. "Aunt Thea," she said, for so the children had taken to calling her, "I have been thinking about my future. Mama says that when I come of age, I must make my own choices about marriage. But I wonder if perhaps there might be another path available, a path more like yours." Theodora smiled, seeing in the girl's earnest expression an echo of her younger self. "Come in, my dear. Sit down. Let us talk about what is possible when one has courage, conviction, and the means to support them both." As they talked long into the afternoon, Theodora understood that this, perhaps, was her true legacy. Not the school, not the essays, not even her own example of independence, but rather the knowledge she could pass to the next generation. That women need not accept the limitations society sought to impose, that there were other ways to live, other definitions of success and happiness. She had chosen her path and never looked back, and in doing so, she had helped create space for others to choose differently as well. Theodora lived to 78, her life a testament to her choice. Hartwell Manor became a school as she willed it, but her true legacy was ensuring the next generation, starting with Arabella's own daughter, knew that a woman's life could truly be her own. Dear listener, perhaps you find yourself at a crossroads, facing expectations that do not align with your own deepest truths. Society has always been skilled at telling us who we must become, what choices we must make, what sacrifices we must offer on the altar of respectability. But Theodora's story reminds us that there is profound courage in choosing authenticity over acceptance, in selecting autonomy over comfort, in valuing our own sense of purpose more than others' approval. Her path was not easy. It required sacrifice, resilience, and the strength to stand alone when necessary. Yet it also brought her something precious beyond measure, a life lived on her own terms, according to her own values. You, too, possess this power. The choice to honor your own truth, even when the cost appears high. The courage to say no to paths that do not serve your highest good. The wisdom to understand that loneliness and aloneness are not the same, that independence need not mean isolation, and that the only person whose opinion of your life truly matters is your own. Tonight, as you prepare for rest, know that you are not required to accept limitations others would impose upon you. You are not obligated to shrink yourself to fit expectations designed for someone else's comfort. Your life is your own, to shape according to your own vision. Like Theodora, you have within you the strength to choose differently, to forge your own path, to create meaning on your own terms. Thank you so much for staying with us until the end. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear it. Your support helps us continue creating stories of love, resilience, and hope.